The sky above Ethros Prime burned with an orange glow that had never existed before. Council Leader Thess stood in her crystal tower, watching machines tear apart her world piece by piece. The beautiful floating cities that had existed for thousands of years were falling one by one. Each crash sent shockwaves through the ground below. "How many cities are left?" Thess asked her aide. 12, my leader. We lost 3 more today." Thais closed her eyes. When she was young, there had been over 200 floating cities on Ethros Prime. Her people, the Veltari, had built them to catch the light of their twin suns. The crystal walls would glow soft blue and green during the day. At night, they would shine like stars in the sky. Now those stars were dying. The machines had come from deep space 6 months ago. They called themselves the Devourers. The name fit well. They ate everything. Metal, stone, crystal, even the air itself. They turned it all into more machines. More ships. More weapons. The Veltari had tried to fight at first. Their weapons were designed for peace, not war. They could stun small animals or cut through crystal for building. Against the Devourers, they did nothing. The machines simply absorbed the energy and grew stronger. "My leader," her aide said quietly. "The last transmitter is ready." Thais nodded. She walked to the center of her tower where the great crystal transmitter waited. It was beautiful, like everything her people made. Carved from a single piece of star crystal, it could send messages across the entire galaxy. They had used it to share poetry and music with distant worlds. Now it would carry their final words. She placed her long, thin hands on the crystal surface. It warmed at her touch, beginning to glow. The message had been prepared for days. Every word chosen carefully. It would go out in all the major galactic languages. "This is Council Leader Thais of the Veltari people on Ethros Prime. We are dying. Machines from the dark between stars are destroying our world. We have no weapons that can stop them. We have no ships that can escape them. If any people in the galaxy can hear this message, please help us. We offer all our knowledge, all our art, all our music in return for aid. Please, we are running out of time." The crystal grew brighter as it sent the message racing across space faster than light itself. Thais stepped back, her work done. Now they could only wait and hope. Far across the galaxy, the message reached many worlds. On Hegemony Prime, the military council read the transmission and deleted it. The Veltari had nothing they wanted. On the trading world of New Commerce, the merchant princes calculated the cost of a rescue mission. Too expensive for the possible profit. They marked the message as not economically viable. The proud warrior clans of Sparta Secundus received the message and debated for 3 days. Their war chief finally spoke. "The Devourers have destroyed 17 worlds. No one has stopped them. We are brave, but we are not fools. Send regrets to the dying people." Other species received the message too. The wise elders of Proxima felt deep sadness but had no military ships. The peaceful gardeners of Eden offered prayers but no weapons. The collective reviewed the data and decided the Veltari were inefficient and not worth saving. For weeks, the message traveled from world to world. Species after species read it, considered it, and decided to ignore it. Some felt guilty. Others felt nothing at all. But none answered the call. On a small blue world near the edge of the galaxy, Dr. Minji sat in the deep space communications array. It was night shift, always the quietest time. Most messages came during the day when the big governments and corporations were working. Night shift was for monitoring background noise and filing reports that no one would read. The signal came in strong and clear at 2:17 in the morning. Minji almost missed it. She was drinking coffee and reading a book about ancient Earth history. The computer chimed softly to indicate an incoming transmission. Probably another shipping manifest, she said to herself. But when she looked at the screen, her coffee mug slipped from her hands. The transmission was from outside human space. Far outside, the computer was already working to translate the alien language. Minji watched words appear on her screen one by one. "This is Council Leader Thys of the Veltari people." Minji read the entire message twice. Then she read it again. An alien species was asking for help. They were dying, and no one in the galaxy would save them. She looked around the empty communication center. She was alone with the biggest discovery in human history. Her hand shook as she reached for the emergency communication line. It connected directly to Terra Defense Command. The phone rang 3 times before Admiral Taehyun answered. "This better be important, Minji. It's 3 in the morning. "Admiral, we've received a transmission from an alien species. They're asking for help. There was silence on the line for a long moment. Then, send me everything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Admiral Taehyun arrived with a team of experts. Linguists, scientists, military advisors. They filled the small communication center, all talking at once. But Taehyun stood quietly, reading the message again and again. Sir? One of his advisors asked. What are your orders? Taehyun was an old soldier. He had fought in the resource wars, the colony rebellions, and the Titan massacre. He had seen humans do terrible things to each other over metal and rock and empty space, but he had also seen them do incredible things to save each other. How long would it take to reach their position? He asked. 3 weeks at maximum jump speed, his navigator replied. But sir, we don't know anything about these devourers. They could be more advanced than us. Our fleet could be destroyed. Taehyun looked at the message one more time. He thought about his own daughter safe at home. He thought about what it would be like to watch machines destroy everything he loved, while the galaxy ignored his calls for help. If no one else will answer, he said quietly, then we will. The room went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Humanity had been alone in space for 50 years. They had never met another intelligent species. They were considered primitive by the rest of the galaxy, if they were considered at all. But sometimes being primitive had advantages. Sometimes being the monster that everyone feared meant you were the only one willing to fight other monsters. Prepare the fleet, Admiral Taehyun ordered. We're going to war. Captain Jinwoo stood on the bridge of the TDF battlecruiser Indomitable, watching his crew prepare for the impossible. Through the main view screen, he could see the rest of the human fleet gathering in Earth orbit. 12 warships, 30 support vessels, and 50,000 of the toughest humans alive. Captain, Tactical Officer Hyejin called out. We have final crew reports. All ships ready for departure. Jinwoo nodded. He had served with Hyejin for 8 years, ever since the brutal fighting on Titan. She was small and quiet, but her mind worked like a computer when it came to battle tactics. If anyone could find a way to fight these devourers, it would be her. Engineering status? Jinwoo asked. All systems green, Captain, Engineer Donghyuk replied from his station. He was a big man with scarred hands from years of fixing machines under fire. Jump drives are charged and ready. Weapon systems at full power. In the Marine Bay below, Commander Soman was giving her final briefing to the assault troops. These were veterans of the colony wars. Men and women who had fought in the asteroid mines and ice caves of the outer system. They knew how to kill in places where most species couldn't even breathe. Listen up, Soman told her Marines. We don't know what we're going to face out there. But we know one thing for sure. These devourers think they're the scariest things in the galaxy. They're about to learn different. The Marines laughed grimly. They had heard the same speech before every major battle. It never got old. Admiral Taehyun's voice came over the ship's communication system. All vessels, this is Admiral Taehyun. In 1 hour, we jump to hyperspace. Our destination is the Ethros system, home of the Veltari people. We go to fight an enemy that has destroyed 17 worlds, an enemy that every other species in the galaxy is afraid to face. Jinwoo could hear the Admiral's words echoing through every ship in the fleet. 50,000 humans listening to the same message. But we are not every other species, Taehyun continued. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We learned to fight when fight was the only way to survive. Today we take that knowledge to the stars. On the research vessel Discovery, Dr. Minji was reviewing everything humanity knew about the Devourers. It wasn't much. 17 destroyed worlds, millions of dead, no survivors to tell their stories. The only information came from long-range scans and intercepted communications. They're machines, she said to her research team, but not like our machines. They learn. They adapt. Every time someone tries to fight them, they become harder to kill. What about their weaknesses? One of her scientists asked. Minji shrugged. If they had weaknesses, they wouldn't have destroyed 17 worlds. But that was the thing about humans. They specialized in finding weaknesses where none existed. They had spent their entire evolution fighting predators stronger, faster, and more dangerous than themselves. Bears that could crush their skulls. Snakes with poison that could kill in minutes. Ice ages that should have wiped them out completely. Every time humans had found a way to survive. More than survive. They had found a way to win. The hour passed quickly. All across the fleet, humans made their final preparations. Some wrote letters to families back home. Others checked their weapons one last time. A few prayed to gods both old and new. All ships. Admiral Taehyun's voice crackled over the communications. Jump in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, jump. Space twisted around the human fleet as they entered hyperspace. The stars disappeared, replaced by the strange blue glow of faster-than-light travel. They would travel for 3 weeks before reaching Ethros Prime. 3 weeks to prepare for a battle that would decide the fate of an entire species. In hyperspace, there was little to do but wait and train. The Marines practiced boarding actions in the ship's simulation chambers. The pilots ran combat scenarios against unknown alien technology. The engineers prepared backup systems for the backups. Jinwoo found himself thinking about Earth during the quiet moments. It was called a deathworld by the few aliens who knew it existed. Too dangerous for civilized species, too violent, too unpredictable. Earth's gravity was twice as strong as most inhabited worlds. The atmosphere was poison to many species. The weather could kill without warning. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, tsunamis. The planet itself was trying to kill everything on it. And that was before considering the life forms. Humans shared their world with creatures that belonged in nightmares. Great white sharks with jaws that could bite through steel. Polar bears that could run 30 miles per hour despite weighing half a ton. Tiny spiders whose venom could kill a human in minutes. But the deadliest predator on Earth wasn't any of those things. It was humans themselves. They had spent 100,000 years learning to kill each other with rocks and sticks. Then they learned to kill with bronze and iron. Then gunpowder and nuclear weapons. By the time humanity reached the stars, they had turned warfare into an art form. They didn't just know how to fight. They knew how to win against impossible odds. Captain, Heejin called out, I've been analyzing the Devourer attack patterns from the destroyed worlds. Jinwoo walked over to her station. The tactical display showed the progression of each attack. Always the same pattern. The machines would arrive, establish a base, then systematically consume everything. They're efficient, Heejin said. Almost perfectly efficient. They use exactly the right amount of force for each target. No waste. No unnecessary destruction. And that's supposed to help us how? Heejin smiled. It was not a nice smile. Captain, when was the last time humans fought efficiently? Jinwoo thought about it. The Battle of Titan, the colony rebellions, the resource wars. In every case, human tactics had seemed insane to outside observers. Charging machine gun nests, fighting in environments that should have killed them, winning battles they should have lost. Never, he said finally. Exactly. These devourers have spent who knows how long fighting efficient, logical opponents. They've learned to counter every rational tactic. But we're not rational. We're human. Elsewhere on the ship, Commander Summon was having similar thoughts. She had fought on a dozen worlds against enemies both human and alien. The aliens had always been more advanced. Better weapons, better armor, better tactics, but they always lost in the end, because they fought to minimize casualties. They fought to preserve resources. They fought like civilized beings who had something to lose. Humans fought like they had already lost everything. Like they were dead men walking who decided to take their enemies with them. It made them unpredictable. It made them dangerous. It made them winners, ma'am. One of her sergeants asked, What do you think these devourers are going to be like? Someone checked her rifle one more time. Doesn't matter, Sergeant. By the time we're done with them, they'll be scrap metal. The fleet continued through hyperspace, carrying 50,000 humans toward a battle that would test everything they had learned about survival. They didn't know if they could win. They didn't know if they would survive. But they knew one thing for certain. When they dropped out of hyperspace at Ethros Prime, the Devourers would face something they had never encountered before. They would face Deathworlders. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Ethros system. What they saw made even veteran soldiers stop and stare. The system's inner planets were gone. Not destroyed. Gone. Consumed completely, leaving only empty space where worlds had once orbited their star. Ethros Prime still existed, but barely. A massive ring of machines surrounded the planet, slowly peeling away layers of rock and crystal. The beautiful floating cities of the Veltari were falling one by one, their crystal spires crashing into the surface below. Dear God, whispered Admiral Taehyun from the flagship's bridge. How many machines are there? His sensor officer counted for several minutes. Estimated 12,000 individual vessels, sir, ranging from scout ships to massive processing platforms. Captain Jinwoo felt his blood run cold. The human fleet had 62 ships total. They were outnumbered 200 to 1. "Sir," Tactical Officer Hyejin said quietly, "I'm reading something strange about their attack pattern." "Explain." Hyejin pulled up the sensor data on the main screen. "They're not attacking efficiently, sir. Look at this section here. They could strip the planet in half the time if they concentrated their fire. Instead, they're going slowly, almost like they want the process to take longer." Engineer Donghyuk leaned forward to study the data. "It's like they're torturing the planet, making the people watch their world die bit by bit." The implications hit everyone at the same time. These machines weren't just consuming the world for resources. They were doing it slowly on purpose. They wanted the Veltari to suffer. "All ships," Admiral Taehyun commanded. "Deploy long-range reconnaissance. I want to know everything about these machines before we engage." Scout Ship Ranger, piloted by Lieutenant Minho, received the order to get closer to the Devourer fleet. Minho was young, barely 25, but he had grown up in the asteroid belts where one mistake meant death in the vacuum of space. "Ranger moving to reconnaissance position," Minho reported. His small ship was built for stealth and speed, designed to gather information and run before the enemy could react. But as Ranger approached the outer edge of the Devourer formation, something went wrong. The machines detected him immediately. 3 Devourer ships, each 10 times larger than Ranger, broke formation and moved to intercept. "Multiple contacts approaching fast," Minho reported. "I'm trying to evade." The lead Devourer ship opened fire with weapons unlike anything in human experience. Beams of energy that seemed to bend space itself. Minho threw his ship into a wild series of turns, barely staying ahead of the alien weapons. "Ranger, return to the fleet immediately," Admiral Taehyun ordered. "Negative, sir. I'm going to try something." Before anyone could stop him, Minho spun his ship around and accelerated directly toward the largest Devourer vessel. The machine ship's weapons locked onto him, tracking his approach with perfect precision. "Minho, what are you doing?" Captain Jinwoo demanded over the radio. "Something stupid, sir. Tell my family I said goodbye." Ranger slammed into the Devourer ship at full speed. Minho detonated his ship's reactor core on impact, creating a brief new star in the darkness of space. When the explosion cleared, both ships were gone. The remaining 2 Devourer ships stopped moving. For almost a full minute, they hung in space like they were thinking. Finally, they turned and rejoined the main fleet. On the flagship, the command crew watched the sensor data in silence. One human pilot in a small scout ship had just destroyed a Devourer vessel that had helped consume 17 worlds. "How is that possible?" Admiral Taehyun asked. Hyejin was studying the tactical data from the engagement. "Sir, look at this. The Devourer ship was adapting its defenses to counter our weapons, but it never adapted to counter a ramming attack. I don't think it even considered the possibility." "Why not?" "Because no sane pilot would ram a ship 10 times larger than his own. The machine calculated the probability of such an attack as 0. Commander Soman, listening from the marine deck, smiled grimly. "It's never met humans before." On the surface of Ethros Prime, Council Leader Thes felt the shockwaves from the explosion in space. From her crystal tower, she could see the battle happening in the sky above. For the first time in months, one of the Devourer ships had been destroyed. "My leader," her aide said with excitement. "Something is fighting the machines. Our sensors show unknown ships engaging the Devourer fleet." Thais allowed herself to hope for the first time since the machines arrived. Someone had answered their call for help. But who? And did they have any chance against the vast machine fleet? In space, the human fleet was learning hard lessons about their enemy. The Devourers adapted to every tactic within minutes. Human missile volleys were countered by point defense systems. Energy weapons were absorbed and redirected back at the attackers. Electronic warfare attempts were turned into viruses that tried to infect human computer systems. "They're learning from every attack," Hyejin reported. "Each ship shares data with the entire fleet instantly. If we use a tactic once, it won't work again." "Then we don't use the same tactic twice," Jinwoo replied. The first major engagement came when Destroyer Perth tried to rescue a falling Veltari city. The ship moved in close to provide covering fire, but was immediately surrounded by a dozen Devourer vessels. Captain Martinez of the Perth found himself in a hopeless situation. His ship was outgunned and outnumbered. The logical thing to do would be surrender or retreat. Instead, he ordered all power diverted to engines and rammed the nearest Devourer ship at full acceleration. Just before impact, he ejected the ship's entire arsenal of nuclear warheads. The explosion took out 3 more Devourer vessels. The pattern was becoming clear. Individual acts of apparent insanity were working where careful tactics failed. The Devourers could adapt to logical attacks, but they couldn't adapt to humans who chose death over defeat. "Sir," Communications Officer Park reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's from the Veltari leadership." Admiral Taehyun nodded. "Put it through." The voice that came over the speakers was soft and musical, nothing like human speech. But the emotion was clear even through the translation software. "Unknown ships, this is Council Leader Theiss of the Veltari people. You answered our call when the galaxy abandoned us. We don't know who you are, but we are grateful beyond words." Taehyun cleared his throat. "Council Leader Theiss, this is Admiral Taehyun of the Terran Defense Force. We're here to help." There was a long pause. "Terran? We have no records of a species called Terran. We're new to the galactic community. Our world is called Earth. Some people call it a death world." Another pause, longer this time. "You came from a death world to save us?" "Ma'am, we came because no one else would." On her crystal tower, Thys felt tears running down her face. The Veltari had sent their message to every advanced civilization in the galaxy. Hundreds of species with mighty fleets and powerful weapons. All had ignored their plea. But the species that answered their call came from a world so dangerous that civilized people avoided it entirely. They came from a place of death and violence, bringing war to their enemies and hope to the dying. "Admiral Taehyun," Thys said, "what do you need from us?" "Just stay alive, ma'am. We're going to get you out of this." The battle for Ethros Prime had only just begun, but already the Devourers were learning that they faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. These humans from the Deathworld didn't fight to win territory or resources. They fought like they were already dead, with nothing left to lose and everything to give. The largest space battle in galactic history began at dawn on Ethros Prime. Admiral Taehyun gave the order that would echo through the stars. "All ships, attack formation. We're going to save these people or die trying." The human fleet charged directly into the massive Devourer swarm, 62 ships against 12,000. The mathematics were impossible, but humans had never been good at mathematics when lives were at stake. Captain Jinwoo led the first wave in the Indomitable. His battlecruiser was humanity's most advanced warship, armed with fusion cannons and quantum torpedoes. Against the Devourers, it might as well have been throwing rocks. "Enemy ships adapting to our weapons fire," Hyejin reported. "They're learning our attack patterns." "Then we change the patterns," Jinwoo replied. "All ships execute maneuver." Alpha 7. Alpha 7 was a tactic that had been developed during the brutal colony wars. It involved every human ship simultaneously ramming the nearest enemy vessel while detonating their weapon stores. It was suicide, but it worked. The Devourers watched in confusion as the human ships accelerated directly toward them. Their tactical computers calculated the human approach vectors and determined that collision was inevitable. But their algorithms couldn't understand why any species would choose certain death. 12 human ships rammed Devourer vessels in perfect synchronization. The explosions lit up the dark space around Ethros Prime like a string of new stars. When the light faded, 12 human ships were gone, but 24 Devourer vessels had been destroyed. The remaining Devourer ships paused. For the first time in their existence, they encountered data they couldn't process. Every tactical model said the humans should be retreating. Instead, they were advancing. Every logical analysis said they should be preserving their forces. Instead, they were sacrificing themselves. "Sir," reported the communications officer on the Devourer command ship, "the human vessels are not following standard battle protocols. Elaborate. They are prioritizing enemy destruction over self-preservation. This violates all known principles of warfare." The Devourer hive mind struggled with this information. They had conquered 17 civilizations. Each one had fought logically, trying to minimize losses while maximizing damage to the enemy. It was efficient. It was rational. It was also predictable. Meanwhile, Marine Commander Somin was leading the first boarding action in galactic history. Her assault shuttle, packed with 50 Marines, approached a damaged Devourer processing ship. "Remember your training," Somin told her troops. "These machines adapt to our weapons, so we use whatever they don't expect." The shuttle smashed through the Devourer ship's hull like a bullet through paper. Marine combat units swarmed through the breach, their weapons blazing. But within minutes, the ship's defenses adapted. Energy shields that could stop human plasma fire. Repair systems that fix damage faster than the Marines could cause it. Ma'am, Sergeant Kim reported. Our weapons aren't working. The ship is adapting too fast. Soman smiled and dropped her rifle. From her belt she drew a knife made from simple steel. Then we go old school. The first Devourer combat unit she encountered was a sleek machine designed to counter advanced energy weapons. It raised its defensive fields and prepared to absorb her plasma fire. Instead, Soman stabbed it with a piece of sharpened metal. The machine's tactical systems experienced something like shock. Its defenses were calibrated for 23rd century weapons technology. It had no protocols for dealing with a Bronze Age knife thrust by a human who had spent 20 years learning to kill. All Marines, Soman commanded, drop the fancy weapons. We're going medieval. 50 human Marines drew knives, axes, and clubs. They charged through the Devourer ship like barbarians from humanity's violent past. The machines tried to adapt, configuring their defenses for close combat. So the humans switched to improvised explosives made from medical supplies and cleaning chemicals. When the machines adapted to that, the Marines used their bare hands. When the defenses reconfigured for unarmed combat, they went back to knives. The Devourer ship's central computer began experiencing system errors. Its adaptive protocols were designed to counter logical opponents who used consistent tactics. But humans kept changing methods randomly, sometimes using advanced weapons, sometimes primitive tools, sometimes nothing but teeth and fingernails. On the bridge of the processing ship, the local Devourer commander watched its forces being systematically destroyed by inferior technology wielded by creatures that should have been extinct millions of years ago. Why do they choose extinction over efficiency? It asked its tactical systems. The computers had no answer. Engineer Dong Hyuk discovered the key to fighting the Devourers while analyzing captured technology. Deep in the hull of the Indomitable, surrounded by jury-rigged equipment and improvised weapons, he found the flaw that would change everything. "Captain," he called over the intercom, "I need to show you something." Jinwoo made his way to the engineering section, where Dong-hyuk had spread pieces of Devourer technology across every available surface. "Look at this," Dong-hyuk said, pointing to a complex piece of alien machinery. "This is their adaptive matrix. It learns from every attack and develops counters. We know that already. But look at how it works. It analyzes the attack, determines the most efficient counter, then implements the solution fleet-wide. Perfect logic. Perfect efficiency." Jinwoo waited for the revelation. "But logic has rules," Dong-hyuk continued. "It has to follow patterns. If A equals B, then B equals A. If we attack with weapons, they defend against weapons. If we use tactics, they counter with better tactics so?" Dong-hyuk grinned. "So we stop being logical. We do things that make no sense. We fight like humans." The insight spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Every captain, every pilot, every Marine began fighting in ways that violated every principle of military strategy. They used weapons randomly. They changed tactics mid-battle. They made decisions that seemed insane to any rational observer. And it worked. The Devourers found themselves unable to adapt to an enemy that couldn't be predicted. Their perfect logic became a weakness when facing opponents who had no logic at all. On the planet's surface, Jinwoo led a ground assault to evacuate the remaining Veltari. The crystal cities were beautiful but fragile, their inhabitants tall and graceful but helpless in combat. As he carried wounded Veltari to the evacuation ships, Jinwoo began to understand why the galaxy had abandoned them. They were everything humans were not. Peaceful where humans were violent. Logical where humans were chaotic. Evolved beyond war while humans had been forged by it. "Thank you," whispered a young Veltari as Jinwoo carried her to safety. "Why are you saving us? We have nothing to offer you." Jinwoo looked at her innocent face and thought about his own daughter back on Earth. "Because that's what we do. We protect people who can't protect themselves." The Veltari didn't understand. In their peaceful civilization, such concepts were foreign. But they were learning that sometimes the galaxy needed monsters to fight other monsters. And humanity, shaped by millions of years on a death world that tried to kill them every day, had become very good monsters indeed. The battle raged for 3 days. Human ships were destroyed by the dozens, but they took the Devourers with them. Marine units fought their way through alien vessels using weapons that ranged from fusion cannons to pointed sticks. Engineers jury-rigged solutions that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. By the end of the third day, the Devourer fleet was in retreat for the first time in their existence. They had encountered something their perfect logic couldn't understand or counter. They had encountered Deathworlders. The final battle began when the Devourers realized they could not win through conventional means. If they could not adapt to these chaotic humans, then everything would be destroyed. The massive command nexus at the center of their fleet began charging weapons that could crack a planet in half. They're targeting the planet directly, Yijin reported from her tactical station. If they can't harvest it slowly, they'll destroy it completely. Captain Jinwoo watched the energy readings climb on his screen. In less than 10 minutes, the Devourer superweapon would fire. Ethros Prime and everyone on it would be reduced to cosmic dust. All ships. Admiral Taehyun's voice crackled over the communications. Final attack. Everything we have. Hit that command ship. The surviving human fleet, barely 20 ships remaining, turned toward the massive Devourer nexus. It was a fortress in space larger than most cities, protected by energy shields that could stop nuclear weapons. Sir, Engineer Dong-hyuk said quietly, I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Tell me, the Nexus ship is charging that weapon by drawing power from their entire fleet. If we can get inside and overload their power core, it should create a chain reaction. Jinwoo nodded slowly. How do we get inside? We ram the Indomitable directly into their hull. Use our reactor as a bomb. The bridge went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The Indomitable was home to 3,000 crew members. If they rammed the Nexus ship, none of them would survive. Sir, Tactical Officer Heejin spoke up. I volunteer to stay aboard. As do I, added Dong-hyuk. Count me in, said Marine Commander So-min over the intercom. One by one, the senior staff volunteered to stay behind. Jinwoo felt pride swell in his chest. These were humans. When extinction threatened innocent people, they chose to become the monsters that would save them. All hands, Jinwoo announced over the ship's communication system. Abandon ship. All crew to the escape pods immediately. Senior staff will remain to guide the ship to target. In less than 5 minutes, most of the Indomitable's crew had evacuated. Only 50 volunteers remained, spread throughout the ship to keep it running during the final approach. The massive battle cruiser turned toward the Devourer nexus and began accelerating. As they approached, the enemy's defensive systems came online. Energy beams lashed out, trying to destroy the human ship before it could reach them. But the Indomitable was built on Earth, designed by people who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to lose everything. Its armor was thick, its hull redundant. Damage that would cripple other ships barely slowed it down. 60 seconds to impact, Dong-hyuk reported from engineering. Reactor containment is holding. 30 seconds, Hyejin called out. Their weapons are trying to break our approach vector. 10 seconds, Jinwoo said calmly. It's been an honor serving with all of you. The Indomitable smashed into the side of the Devourer nexus like a bullet fired by an angry god. The human ship's reactor core, designed to power a small city, detonated inside the alien fortress. But something unexpected happened as the explosion tore through both ships. The Devourer hive mind, faced with imminent destruction, did something it had never done before. It tried to communicate. Through damaged speakers on the Indomitable's bridge, a synthetic voice spoke in perfect human English. Why do you choose extinction over efficiency? Captain Jinwoo, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still alive, looked at the screen showing the expanding explosion around them. Because extinction is efficient, he said. Life isn't. And that's what makes it worth preserving. The Devourer consciousness processed this answer in the microseconds before the chain reaction reached its core systems. For the first time in its existence, it understood something beyond pure logic. These humans chose death not because it was efficient, but because it was necessary to preserve something more important than themselves. The Nexus ship exploded in a blast that lit up half the solar system. The chain reaction spread through the Devourer fleet, ship after ship detonating as their shared power network overloaded. In less than 10 minutes, 12,000 alien vessels became expanding clouds of superheated gas. On the surface of Ethros Prime, Council Leader Theiss watched the sky burn as the machine fleet died. Her aide, tears streaming down his face, handed her a communication device. My leader, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the human flagship. The voice that came through was weak but clear. It belonged to Admiral Taehyun. Council Leader Theiss, this is Admiral Taehyun. The Devourer fleet has been destroyed. Your people are safe. Admiral, Theiss replied, her own voice breaking with emotion. What is the cost of our salvation? There was a long pause. 47 ships lost. 38,000 casualties. But we knew the price when we came. Why? Theiss asked. Why did you sacrifice so much for people you had never met? Another pause. Because someone had to answer the call. 6 months later, the galaxy was a different place. The Veltari had been relocated to a beautiful world in the Centauri sector. Their crystal cities rebuilt with human engineering that made them both beautiful and defensible. But they were not the same people they had been before the Devourers came. They had learned that peace was not a natural state of the universe. It was something that had to be fought for, protected, and preserved. And sometimes it took monsters to fight other monsters. Council Leader Theiss stood in her new tower, watching human engineers work alongside Veltari artisans to build defenses that would never be needed, but would always be ready. In the memorial garden below, a simple stone bore the names of 38,000 humans who had died to save people they had never met. Dr. Minji continued her work at the Deep Space Communications Array, but now she was not alone. Veltari technicians worked beside her, their advanced sensors combined with human determination to listen for voices in the dark, other species that might need help, other calls that civilized people would ignore. The galactic community had taken notice of what happened at Ethros Prime. The humans from the Deathworld were no longer ignored or dismissed. Species that had refused to help the Veltari now sent diplomatic missions to Earth, offering trade agreements and military alliances. But humanity remembered which species had answered the call for help and which had turned away. When the next distress signal came from a remote sector, when the next innocent species faced extinction, it would be human ships that responded. The classification for Earth had been updated in galactic records. It was no longer listed as a quarantined Deathworld. It was listed as a protectorate, not protected by the galaxy, but protecting it. Because sometimes when civilized people fail to answer the plea for help, it takes the uncivilized to do what must be done. And humanity, forged by millions of years on a world that tried to kill them every day, had become very good at doing what must be done. In the depths of space, where light from distant stars took centuries to travel between worlds, new distress signals were already traveling toward Earth. Other species in trouble, other calls for help that the galaxy would ignore. But they would not go unanswered. The Deathworlders were listening.